Hey everyone, happy 2013. Sorry to keep you waiting this long, but I have been rendered nearly insensible by the awesomeness of a certain literary movie that is smack in the PBAB purview. Let's dig in to Les Mis.
It's like Kirk and Spock, only they're both Danish. Possibly both.
If Jews run Hollywood, why can't we get a Jew to play the freaking Jewish
Is
character?
he rescuing these people with his penis?
As with any other title that has such a storied history, it's hard to shake off the baggage that you come into it with, especially if it's like mine. Hardly Carry On. Les Mis was a musical that was talked up to me when I was young by basically everybody. Parents, to friends, to camp counselors, to everyone who possibly talked to me. I saw it for the first time when I was 11 and was in literal shock the whole time from how sweepingly glorious I thought it was. I've seen it 4 times since then, and after my second time, I also read the book at age 14. The last time I saw the musical was late 2010, so it's only been a few years since my last stage experience. It is by far my favorite musical, and I only loved it more after reading The Brick. Oh yeah, the fandom calls the book The Brick, if you didn't know that. It's very apt, seeing as it's liable to be over 1,000 pages, no matter how font-crunchingly, eye-strainingly tiny the words are in your edition. The point is, I'm not going to be picking apart the story and critiquing this the way I would a movie that was telling me something entirely new, where I would want to discuss plot continuity and things like that. I already love the story of Les Mis, especially how the musical does it, and the movie pretty much preserves that. It's about a bread thief who is on the run from a determined police officer over decades of post-revolutionary French history, where he saves a small child from a life of horrible abuse, and then eventually sees her married off to a rebel student who is also a baron. There you go. Les Mis. If you find the story too contrived, too emotionally manipulative, or too sprawling, the movie won't convince you otherwise. However, if you can rock out with some larger-than-life melodrama, hop on in, because this movie keeps the spirit of the stage play while turning it into something entirely new and its own. I'm tempted at this point to say that you could basically just watch my Coriolanus review, because overall I'm going to be saying very similar things about how I feel about it and how it's adapted an ultimately theatrical thing to the screen. Overall, like Coriolanus, the story was done very well, primarily because you had a strong cast that was used to completely reinvent the story for the new medium. The movie looks and sounds nothing like the original stage musical, and I personally consider that a huge frickin' victory. Instead of being constrained or straitjacketed into using the vernacular and the tools of a wildly different medium, especially given how iconic the aesthetic of Les Mis has been over the past 27 years, they made a real movie, and a triumphant one at that. For example, one of the things that they change that makes it feel so different is on stage, someone will loudly sing powerfully until their dying breath, but on screen here, you hear people fade away and die, their last weakening lines keeping you gripped to the screen, much in the same way that the powerful, resonant dying lines would keep you wrapped to the stage. They take this kind of mentality and embrace it, with a realness and rawness of the live singing being palpable. Many songs rang true to me in ways they never have before, such as Red and Black, which was my favorite song in the show, and A Heart Full of Love, which was my least favorite song in the show, and the entire finale sequence. This movie was not about the singing, it was about bringing it in a very real way right to you. So while everyone could basically carry a tune and sound okay, they were acting their roles first and foremost. And I'm not one to ignore the singing, believe me. It's what made me detest Sweeney Todd so much. So when I say this movie took the heavy lifting off of the singing, I mean they effectively turned it into a different kind of storytelling entirely, one that uses singing in a different way than a stage musical does. No one's belting like they're singing to the back of an auditorium, mostly because they are in no way singing to the back of an auditorium. The cameras are probably closer to them than mine is right now. It is film acting with song, not songs being shoved into a smaller medium of the screen coming straight off of the stage, and my opinion, it is glorious. Also, the pieces of visual continuity in between the songs that we know from the stage are mostly scenes taken straight from the book, and they are incredibly well done and well woven into the larger narrative. I'll spare you for spoilers, but let's just say if you've read the book, you'll be over the moon at how well and how often those bits are worked in. Speaking of working pieces and scenes together, the willingness of the filmmakers to cut songs down or move them around and even add stuff in, such as mini dialogue scenes, was wonderful. On screen, things are more literal. The moments are shorter and more finely drawn, since you don't need a solo that's quite as long to convey a moment. And they really took advantage of that, and many lyrics are in fact changed to reflect a more literal expression of what's going on. I prefer that a fair bit over preserving all the lyrics and words out of a sense of completeness or accuracy's sake, especially after recently sitting through the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet. Swords, after all, still not being guns. And taking things out of order led to one of the most thrilling sequences of the movie. Again, I won't spoil things by saying which one it was, but I'll just say that I wasn't sure how they were going to transition away from the legendarily act-breaking number One Day More, after which you usually get a break. And the way they chose to transition away from it was brilliant and so ballsy, I just had to give props. Much like Coriolanus, my only issues with this movie are cinematographic errors. Too much quick cutting, too much Dutch angling, and far too few establishing shots. Now, these types of errors were certainly more forgivable in Coriolanus, where you had a first-time director, while Tom Hooper has a damn Oscar, but it's the same low-level kind of mistake that isn't taking me out of the story, not even a little. For my money, it just wasn't enough to warrant a major issue. While the errors were worse here, the effective moments were also much more beautiful, including several shots that made Javert look like a piece of imposing architecture, a traditional and awe-inspiring artifice in the role of a man. Now, some people disliked the long takes and the close-ups, but I thought that they actually looked pretty good. The only issue with the close-ups is that there weren't enough establishing shots before we zoomed right in, but I didn't think they were bad in themselves, even though of course there might have been other ways you could choose to stage those solos. Maybe it was a nod to the stage musical, though I'm not sure about that. Before we jump into the performances, I'd like to say a few words about the set. It's gorgeous. I couldn't get over how beautiful the art design and the sets were here. It was world building on an appropriately grand scale, even as the gruesomeness and the disgusting parts were brought right to the fore in the gritty streets of all these different towns. It was just epic. I don't have a super sharp eye for this, so let's move right on to the performances. The performances were great. The entire movie was ridiculously well cast. Hugh Jackman broke my heart as Valjean. I have never wept more at the end of Les Mis than I did here. Amanda Seyfried, Anne Hathaway, obviously, Samantha Barks, Eddie Redmayne. They were a fantastic set of supporting characters. I felt the appropriate things about their characters through their portrayals. And I would like to put in a word for Russell Crowe's Javert, who scared the absolute hell out of me. And also refer back to the scene where Jean Valjean sets him free on the barricade to see if he really was bad at this. He was amazing. I thought a credit to this movie was that anytime someone appeared on screen, there was a reaction to them. Javert was scary. The Thénardiers, played really well by Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter, were always effectively gross. Marius and Cosette were adorable and made you want to see them happy and safe together. Fantine and Éponine were aggressively sympathetic, and all of this felt natural, as opposed to the bombast which appropriately accompanies and defines a stage production of this. So there's not much more for me to say. I mean, I'm not super critical of this movie. I thought it was amazing. I do understand, however, why people are critical of this movie. For my money, after seeing so many things, though, that try to be too true to the look and sound and feel of a stage, thank you, Romeo and Juliet, I'm just happy to see someone make a movie and feel free to play with their source material. It's as if they meant to adapt the book and happen to have the score on hand to do that. I will be pulling for this movie to win Best Picture. I loved it, and I really do want Anne Hathaway to win Best Supporting Actress, but that looks likely. Fingers crossed for Eddie Redmayne, because he was surprisingly good as Marius for me, so People have been saying he might get a Best Supporting Actor nomination, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. And with that, I leave you to your probable criticism and or hatred of this movie, and simply declare that I love it. And whether you liked it or not, I also do recommend Dreamgirls if you caught the movie musical bug and want to know where to go next. That's definitely the movie that I've been thinking Les Mis, the best musical movie since Dreamgirls. I guess till next time, which will probably be Much Ado, Great Gatsby, or Romeo and Juliet, farewell. Think of the world.
I love him. I love him. I love him. But only on my own.
Oh god, if next time is Great Gatsby, can somebody else please do that one? Baz Luhrmann, so many quick cuts.